Hey guys, in today's video I bring you a simply shocking and revealing story. Let's meet Ilaria Whitmore, a devout Christian who lived an exemplary faith until the day she suffered a cardiac arrest and, after dying for a few minutes, was taken by Jesus to a terrifying vision of hell. There she saw something she would never have imagined. Christians, leaders, people who prayed, praised, and knew the Bible, all in eternal torment because of an invisible but mortal sin. What she discovered on the other side will shake her certainties and change her way of seeing faith. So before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Now get ready, because this near-death experience will confront you in a way you've never heard before. My name is Ilaria Whitmore. I grew up in the church. I was baptized at 11 years old, and since then, I have always made a point of being involved in everything related to faith. I read the Bible every day, prayed frequently, attended services, helped with the women's ministry, and led Bible studies with a steady group of sisters. Whenever someone needed intercession, I was ready. My name was remembered with respect at Grace Point Fellowship church meetings in Ridge Hollow. People called me God's woman, and in a way, I believed that I was. The truth, however, is that I felt constantly compared to others. Secretly, I thought God was more pleased with me than with the sister who barely showed up to services or that boy who still struggled with addictions. I smiled, hugged, prayed for everyone, but inside, I felt proud for being better. I thought that if I was sincere enough in devotion and served more than others, I would be safe. Hell for me was a place reserved for cruel people, for atheists, for rebels who mocked God, not for people like me. I believed without a doubt that I was on the right path. That afternoon in January 2019, I left the house in a hurry. I had slept little the night before, my head was throbbing, and I needed to buy a painkiller at the nearby pharmacy. The wind bit my face, and I walked quickly, ignoring my tiredness. I remember I was repeating a verse in my head as I crossed the street. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And then, it was missing. A sudden dizziness, the world spun. I felt a strong tightness in my chest and tried to grab something, but my hands were weak. The bag fell, my knees gave way. After that, silence. A dark and total silence. I was dying, and I had no idea what I was about to discover. After the collapse, I was enveloped by a type of darkness that could not be compared to anything in this world. It wasn't simply an absence of light, it was as if the very concept of existence had been suspended. There was no floor, there was no body, there was no time. I didn't feel cold or hot. I didn't hear any sound, nor did my thoughts have any weight. It was like floating in an eternal void, with consciousness intact, but without any reference to what was real. And as strange as it may seem, I knew I had left my body. I knew that my life, as I knew it, was over. I thought about praying, but my words didn't make a sound. It was in this immense silence that something began to change. In the distance, a light appeared, but it wasn't just glitter. That light pulsed, alive, as if it were breathing. It had heat, movement, and a presence so powerful that my soul began to shudder. There was no shadow in it, it was pure, penetrating as if it were looking straight into me. And then, in the center of that light, a figure appeared. There was no doubt. It was him. Not because someone told me. I knew. It was Jesus. His presence carried an authority as overwhelming as an ocean, but at the same time it was filled with a peace so profound that it made my defenses crumble. There was no hiding anything from him. Everything about me was exposed, even without words being spoken. He didn't smile, but he didn't show anger either. There was love in his eyes, firm love, true love, but also a solemnity that made me fear what was to come. Without moving his lips, he spoke within me, as if his voice were imprinted on my very soul. "I have something important to show you, something that you and many others have refused to see." At that moment, I felt something open around me, as if spiritual space was tearing apart. I still didn't know where he would take me, but a part of my being already feared the answer. When the light dissipated, I was led to a place that tore at my chest before I even understood it. Hell. The first thing I felt was the suffocating heat, as if the air itself were living flames. The ground beneath my feet was uneven, cracked into deep cracks where flames appeared and retreated, emitting an ominous crack. A smell of sulfur and burning flesh invaded my consciousness, even without physical sense, and I heard or felt me scream so deep that they seemed to scratch my soul. As my eyes adjusted, I realized I wasn't alone. People walked, or staggered, in agony. Some tried to escape the fire. Others simply screamed, without any relief. And then I recognized faces. Bethany, choir leader, Marcus, Bible school teacher, even Pastor Reuben Clark, each trapped in their own torment, burning without being consumed, as if the suffering fueled something even darker within them. I couldn't hold back a scream. "Reuben!" But Jesus touched me on the shoulder, firm and silent. He made me look beyond the visible pain into the hearts of that crowd. In every soul there was a shadow, pride that fed on self-pity, internal judgments that prevented them from loving, a desperate attachment to religious appearances that now burned like chains. I saw Bethany holding an imaginary choir, repeating hymns that had never touched her heart. I saw Marcus trying to argue with unseen voices about doctrine, even while being tortured. I saw Pastor Clark enveloped in smoke, his eyes filled with confusion and pain, unable to recognize the love he once preached. Jesus spoke, his voice piercing hell like gentle thunder. They served, prayed, and knew my word, but they never allowed themselves to be changed by it. Pride condemned them. Each word cut through my inner defense like a blade. My chest hurt as I understood that this could be my destiny. Not because of the severity of my sins, but because of the state of my heart. I stood there witnessing the most terrifying truth I have ever known. Being close to God is no guarantee of salvation. Hell was full of people who, like me, thought they were safe. The presence of Jesus remained at my side as my gaze turned to the depths of that abyss. I couldn't look away, there was no denying the reality before me. Then he began to point without accusation, but with a clarity that destroyed me inside. "See, Ilaria," he said, and his voice sounded like hammer on steel. "The sin that corrodes these souls is spiritual pride." I looked at Bethany. She was crying as she sang, but her crying was empty about herself. There was no regret, just anguish at being exposed there. I saw Marcus trying to justify every thought that had led him to that place, debating with himself doctrines that were now useless in the face of pain. Pastor Clark, who had so often comforted me with sermons of grace, now proved himself incapable of receiving the mercy he preached. Jesus continued, "They prayed and fasted, but to be seen. They knew my word, but they used it to judge. They served in ministries, but their hearts remained cold and closed. They never truly repented, because they trusted in their works and the approval of others." I felt as if every accusation was aimed at my own chest. My prayers now resounded like empty echoes, my Bible studies mere intellectual exercises. Everything I had considered a virtue turned out to be a mask. "Pride is the deadliest sin," he continued, "for it leads to presumption of one's own righteousness. And this presumption closes the heart to the only one who can save." In the midst of that scene of torment, I realized something even more horrible. Each soul was so absorbed in their own pain and justification that they didn't even notice the presence of Christ there. The Savior who walked among them, offering deliverance, was ignored or rejected amid the clamor of his own works. A crushing truth hit me. It wasn't just those familiar faces that were there. It was a reflection of what I myself could become if I didn't break my heart. Spiritual pride had trapped them in an eternal cycle of suffering. My physical body felt distant, but my soul felt crushed. I fell to my knees on the rough floor of that abyss, tears flowing silently as my mind screamed for mercy. As I doubled over in pain, Jesus reached out his hand and a soft light shone around us, separating me from the scene of agony. Suddenly, I no longer saw familiar faces. I saw only my own reflection projected in a spiritual mirror. It was not a physical reflection, but the naked portrait of my heart. Every hidden thought, every silent judgment, every whispered comparison to my spirit was there, crystallized before me. I found myself leading Bible studies with words full of wisdom, but feeling a hint of pride with each compliment I received. I saw my prayers held high as trophies, displayed for all to see my devotion, not to pour out my heart to God. I found myself comforting others, but secretly judging those who didn't fit my standards of holiness. I found myself holding on to old hurts, refusing to forgive small offenses because my heart needed to maintain a sense of superiority. Jesus spoke, his voice soft and penetrating. "Ilaria, this is the truth that few have the courage to face, not your isolated sins, but the state of your heart. You have relied on your works to feel righteous, and you have forgotten that it is by grace alone that you live." Each word seemed to peel away layers of myself, exposing a painful reality. I didn't truly love. I loved myself. As tears flowed, deep regret flooded my soul. It wasn't just remorse for wrongdoing, but a complete breakdown of trust in myself. I felt as if every false prayer, every gesture of approval had been thrown into a bonfire of purification that consumed every last bit of pride. Jesus continued, but now his tone was tender. "This is the beginning of true humility. Only a broken heart can be transformed. Only those who recognize their total dependence on me can enter the kingdom." There was no bargaining, only surrender. My pride was shattered, and for the first time I felt truly vulnerable before God. My soul cried out for mercy, not for justice, but for grace. The darkness of that mirror dissipated, and a gentle peace unlike anything I had ever known began to envelop me. When the darkness of the mirror dissipated, I was enveloped by a light that did not burn, but caressed every fiber of my being. It wasn't the sky I imagined, no fluffy clouds or gentle harps, but a place of vibrant life, color and sound intertwined in perfect harmony. I walked on a ground that seemed made of solid light, each step echoing like a soft chord that reverberated within me. Around me, crowds of people of all ages, races and cultures interacted naturally. There was no distinction of positions or titles. I didn't see any familiar Ridge Hollow faces there, just faces beaming with joy and genuine fellowship. They smiled, effortlessly, shared stories without judgment, and helped each other with spontaneity, as if each act was an expression of pure gratitude. Suddenly I recognized a woman who had previously made me jealous with her apparent holiness. But here she showed no pride. His eyes were bright with humility. In another corner, a man who I thought was spiritually weak hugged a child with a love so deep that my heart contracted with emotion. Jesus walked beside me, pointing out details that I would never have noticed on my own. A young woman offering water to an elderly man, a group singing not in perfect pitch, but with voices that intertwined as if they were a single melody. There was no need for perfection, there was authenticity. Then he spoke, and his voice was gentle as a breeze over flowers. "See, Ilaria, this is the fruit of transformation. Here, every heart has been broken, every soul has recognized its dependence on me. There are no masks and no appearances. There is only living love." My vision expanded, and I saw thousands of hands raised, not in performative worship, but in spontaneous gratitude. The atmosphere pulsed with indescribable joy and peace. I felt such a deep thirst to belong there that tears of longing flowed without warning. Jesus then touched my shoulder and said, "This is the destiny that those who truly surrender choose. It is not by works, but by transformation of the heart." As the vision began to fade, a certainty invaded my soul. This place was real, and I wanted more than anything to be shaped to go there one day. Not as a leader or example, but as a humble servant, completely dependent on his love. As the heavenly light dissipated and I began to return to the spiritual abyss from which I had come, Jesus stopped and, with a penetrating gaze, revealed words that would burn my soul forever. Hell is full of people who said, "Lord, Lord." He spoke, as if each syllable weighed tons. They repeated prayers, they prophesied, they taught my word, but they never allowed it to teach them. They were never born again. My mind tried to process. I knew those verses. He had preached them countless times. But in that moment, each sentence exploded with meaning. Religion without transformation is a whitewashed sepulcher, beautiful on the outside, but rotten on the inside. He continued, Christians are dying every hour with the false confidence of their salvation. Many still believe that access to religious symbols, works, and ministerial positions guarantees them entry into the kingdom. But I look to the heart. Jesus pointed to the abyss again, where familiar faces plunged into endless torment. See them reject my touch, ignore my call. They cry out for self-righteousness while refusing grace. My chest tightened as I realized I had walked dangerously, close to this trap, relying more on showy devotion than sincere surrender. Then he spoke one last truth before preparing me for my return. Religion without transformation is dangerous. Judgments and appearances become eternal chains. Only those who truly repent and allow my Spirit to shape them know life. As his words echoed, I was filled with a mixture of terror and hope. Terror at the reality of hell and my proximity to it. Hope for the possibility of real change. Then I felt my being pulled back, not by force but like a gentle breath that took me back to the body. The silence of the void gave way to a growing awareness of my own inert body, surrounded by distant voices and medical alarms. My last conscious memory before I woke up was the small voice of Jesus in my heart. There is still time, but don't waste it. When my eyes opened again, I found the white ceiling of the hospital, not the abyss or the celestial splendor. My body felt heavy, as if I had crossed centuries in an instant. Machines beeped rhythmically and doctors' hurried voices filled the air, speaking in terms I barely understood. I felt cold. Hands grabbed my wrist as I tried to process the strangeness of being alive. Despite the confusion around me, my mind was crystal clear. There was no doubt that what I experienced was real. As they watched me, the doctors explained about cardiac arrest, stress, and dehydration, but no scientific explanation could touch the certainty that burned in my heart. Silent tears streamed down my face as I remembered Jesus' words. Hell, the vision, the mirror of my own pride. A sense of urgency invaded me. My life could not return to the superficial routine it had been before. Every moment now carried eternal weight. In the following days, I received visits from brothers at Grace Point. Formal greetings and customary prayers appeared, but I knew nothing could stay the same. Instead of reciting memorized verse, my words were simple. I went through hell and I found Jesus. He showed me what matters. Some looked scared, others skeptical. Few understood the depth of what I brought. Alone in the room, I picked up my Bible and opened it. Instead of quickly skimming for text to memorize, I let my eyes rest without rushing, asking God to speak directly to my heart. Each verse leapt off the pages with new life, not as an obligation, but as nourishment. Upon being discharged, I decided to take some time away from formal ministry. I went for a walk through the cold fields of Ridge Hollow, feeling the sharp wind against my face, but now no longer as an adversary but as a reminder that I breathed, a precious gift. As I walked, I prayed silently, not to be seen or praise my devotion, but to express gratitude and dependence. My life had a new purpose, to live broken, free from the yoke of pride and point others to the same painful truth that had freed me. I knew the path would be difficult, but for the first time I walked guided not by my righteousness but by the grace that had found me in that moment when everything seemed lost. When I finally found myself at home, away from the monitors and the hospital hustle and bustle, a new silence took over my being, a silence of reverence and responsibility. I couldn't ignore the urgency of that experience. That same night, I sat at the kitchen table with my Bible open, a pen, and an empty notebook in front of me. My hands shook as I wrote down every detail, every word of Jesus, every face in hell, every sensation that almost broke my soul. It wasn't just a testimony to be shared. It was a call for continuous transformation. I knew it wasn't enough to tell the story. I needed to live the truth I had received. In the days that followed, I established new practices, daily self-examination, confessing pride as it arose, and intentionally seeking humility in every interaction. When I found myself judging, I would stop and ask for forgiveness. When I felt the desire to be recognized, I remembered the abyss. I shared my account with my small Bible study group. Some cried, others were uncomfortable. Many tried to soften the message. But I persisted. It's not about condemning, but about showing the truth that frees. Grace only transforms when we recognize what needs to change in us. Over time, I slowly returned to ministry, but in a different way. No longer as someone seeking approval, but as someone who walks along, vulnerable and honest about my struggles. I began to emphasize love over knowledge, grace over performance. My preaching was not about listing rules, but about inviting every heart to a radical encounter with Jesus. Today, my life is marked by daily surrender, a path of humility, repentance, and dependence. I know that thousands of Christians live in apparent safety, but perilously close to a destiny I have seen with my own eyes. I can't keep this truth to myself. If you read these words, know, there is time to change, but it is now. Do not trust your works. Trust in the grace that corrodes pride and renews from the inside out. I'm Ilaria Whitmore. I was on my way to hell, but grace found me and made me truly live. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.